The frozen sky above tundra, 9 cracked with lightning that shimmered violet against the snowfields. High above, Yalorok battlecruisers floated like black sharks in a storm, their underbellies opening to spill fire and steel. On the surface, a mining outpost, barely more than steel crates stacked on rock, crumbled beneath the precision strikes. General Nashtera of the Yalorok Dominion surveyed the wreckage from his command ship's viewport, for arms folded over his plated chest. His scales caught the ship light in shades of dull pewter. This had been no battle, only cleanup. Another forgotten colony. Another species pushed a little further back toward extinction. "Scan for survivors," he ordered, voice low and flanged with static. "Bring me something amusing." A junior officer clicked his mandibles. Humans are known for their sentimentality. Perhaps a trinket or one of their young. Nashtera grunted. "Excellent idea. Let them know we've taken something precious. Maybe then they'll stop hiding behind their embassies and show us a fight." What the scavenger drones found was a heat signature buried beneath a collapsed dome. A child, human, no older than a year, wrapped in thermal fabric and nestled beside a long-dead caretaker, frozen stiff with arms still protectively curled. The child was warm, alive, and quiet. Eyes like ice chips stared up at the drone lens with uncanny calm. They brought her aboard with great care, not from compassion, but curiosity. Nashtera examined the creature as it blinked slowly at him from inside a transparent stasis cradle. "She doesn't even cry," he said. "Maybe it knows better." A scientist dared to suggest it could be in shock. "Human children." Nashtera corrected. "This one is mine now. A trophy." He lifted the stasis dome's lid. The baby reached up, touching his armor with tiny fingers. Somewhere deep in the ship, a sensor array spiked and died. Nashtera, amused, assigned the girl to his private suite, where golden tapestries of conquered worlds adorned every wall. He named her Squiblet, a mocking twist on an ancient Yalorok curse word that implied uselessness. It became a joke throughout the ship. A human baby as pet. A general's indulgence. His ship, the Dominion's Wrath, became the butt of late-night broadcast comedians across the outer reaches. Still, the child survived. She refused to eat anything from Yalorok cuisine, but inhaled warm milk substitutes in impossible quantities. Alien medics tracked her eye movements, always aware, always watching. She rarely cried, but when she did, the ship's temperature sensors fluctuated. Once, the engine room dropped to freezing in under a minute. Nashtera laughed off the anomalies. Coincidence. Or human trickery. They leak from every hole. Probably some glandular fault. Meanwhile, across the stars, Earth watched. Not with noise or outrage, but silence. General Hal Rennick of the Terran Strategic Command stood in his office aboard Vigilance Station, orbiting the edge of the Alderaan Rift. A slow, quiet man with lines carved into his face like they'd been etched by time itself. His uniform was unadorned, save for a single silver pin, a broken flame, the insignia of Operation Heathfire. He sipped coffee from a black tin mug and watched the flickering holofeed on the wall. Nashtera's face filled the feed, smug, triumphant. Behind him, the girl. Alive. Quiet. "Is this her?" whispered Commander Liao, flanking Rennick's side. She didn't dare say the name aloud. Rennick didn't blink. "Yes. We could issue formal protest. Send the scryers to open peace channels." "No." Liao hesitated. "Then war." "Worse," Rennick said, setting the mug down with a muted clink. "We're going to be polite." He turned toward the console. "Activate Heathfire. All phases. Initiate full-spectrum containment." Liao's face paled. "Sir, that's across all sectors." "We gave them time to forget who we are," Rennick said. "It's time to remind them." Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion's Wrath, the child grew curious. Her feet found balance. She began walking the halls under armed escort, silent as frost. She touched things she shouldn't, control panels, interface crystals. They shorted out. The maintenance crews grumbled, then stopped, then disappeared. A week later, half the ship's environmental controls were rerouted for unknown reasons. "She's like a shadow in flesh," one tech whispered. I don't think she's normal. She's a human, another replied, but with less certainty than before. Nashtera, for all his arrogance, noticed the unease growing among his crew. He attempted to raise her as a novelty, taught her to bow, to clap when he entered the room. She stared blankly through him. Once, she mimicked the tone of his voice so perfectly the bridge thought it was a command. Engines fired. The ship jumped without coordinates. When asked how she did it, the girl only looked at Nashtera and said, Daddy taught me numbers. They all assumed she was parroting human gibberish. None asked the right question. Which daddy? Alien chatter grew restless. The Yalarok newsfeed spun the story for laughs, then concern. A minor ambassador asked, why haven't the humans responded? No sanctions? No saber-rattling. An older Kelinari monk blinked slowly. They are not insulted. They are waiting. Across the Dominion, minor anomalies multiplied. Yalarok fuel convoys vanished, supply chains cut by unknown parties. Deep space observatories picked up static, encoded messages buried in white noise, replaying a lullaby no alien could translate. Fleets sent to investigate never returned. None connected it to the child. Back on Vigilance Station, Rennick stood before a map of known space. Tiny red dots bloomed on it like fireflies. How long until Phase 2? 6 days. We're waiting for confirmation from the listening post on Vargan's belt. Then we move to entropy testing. Test on target? No, Rennick said. We test on their moon. The officer hesitated. Sir, you do realize this could end with... Rennick cut him off. He took my daughter. A silence followed, so full of weight it could have collapsed stars. Then the officer simply nodded. Understood. Back on the Dominion's wrath, the baby girl sat on Nashtera's throne chair while he raged across the bridge. Systems flickered, logs corrupted, long-range sensors looped uselessly. I want this thing debugged, he screamed. The girl giggled. The temperature dropped 3 degrees. Suddenly, a low-ranking signal officer piped up. Sir, you should see this. A transmission had arrived. Human origin. Visual only. It was General Hal Rennick, seated calmly, bathed in cold light. His voice was soft, almost kind. To General Nashtera of the Yalarok Dominion, I believe you're in possession of my child. Please return her. A pause. If you fail to comply, we will take actions to secure her safety. These actions will not be cruel. They will be precise, surgical. You will not see them coming. You will not understand them until it's far too late. Then, with the faintest smile, do take care. She is very special. The message ended. Nashtera's laughter echoed across the deck, sharp and forced. This is their threat? Words and posture? The humans bluff. They always bluff. But no one laughed with him. Not anymore. Behind him, the baby girl hummed softly, tapping her fingers against the control panel. The lights dimmed again. In a sector just beyond Yalarok borders, a listening station exploded without a trace. Rennick stood alone in his quarters, watching the stars spin past. The slow burn of vengeance measured out like chess moves. His fingers hovered over a small silver bracelet on the table, the match to the one his daughter had worn on Tundra 9. He didn't weep. He didn't rage. He simply said, to no one in particular, you should not have touched what was ours. And across the galaxy, the old empires stirred in dread. Something was coming. Not fury, not chaos. Something colder, something human. The galactic envoy from Earth arrived without fanfare. No drums, no blaring signals, no tactical escort fleets. Just one sleek Terran vessel, the modest proposal, gliding into Yalarok-controlled space like a silver letter slipped beneath a locked door. Its arrival was so unremarkable that the Dominion nearly missed it on sensors. By the time anyone realized it was there, a polite diplomatic ping had already been transmitted. General Nashtera narrowed his eyes as the signal played. The voice on the transmission was calm, warm, and entirely too human. Greetings, esteemed Yalarok Command. We're simply here to inquire about a child. One of ours, misplaced during the unfortunate incident on Tundra 9. We would be grateful for her return. No fuss. No damage done. There was no threat, not even implied, which was the first warning sign. "They're begging," said Admiral Zun, sneering. "They've sent diplomats to request their offspring like we're a nursery." Nashtara gave no answer. He stared at the stilled image of the envoy, a woman, maybe 40 by human standards, in an EarthGov Navy blazer with no visible rank. She smiled with a softness that felt manufactured. "Invite her aboard," Nashtara finally said. When the human envoy stepped onto the Dominion's Wrath, she bowed, not deeply, but just enough to be culturally respectful. The bridge crew squinted at her like one might at an exotic fungus. "Ambassador Marindel," she said. "Thank you for receiving me." "You're very composed," Nashtara observed. "Oh, I'm just a mother," she said cheerily. "Well, a godmother. And a logistician. Technically, a cultural analyst. But mostly I help people find what they've lost." He motioned for her to sit. "You are here to retrieve the child?" "Merely to confirm she's well. And to ask, respectfully, if she might be returned." "Why all this effort for a squib?" Nashtara asked, studying her expression. Marin only smiled. "Humans place value on things that others might overlook. It's one of our peculiarities." He snorted. "You breed too quickly to care for each one." "And yet," she said, "here I am." The baby girl, now nearing 2, was brought into the chamber. She sat quietly on the floor, surrounded by plush objects the Yallarok considered stimulating, but humans might call grotesque, metallic shapes, fractal puzzles, a toy that hummed when stared at too long. She ignored them all. Her eyes locked on Marin. "There's a good girl," Marin whispered. The girl said nothing, but a near imperceptible nod passed between them. Nashtara didn't notice. His focus was on the ambassador. "You have 3 minutes." Marin knelt beside the child, gently placing a small brass pin, a bird with outstretched wings, into the child's hand. Then she stood. "I appreciate your hospitality, General," she said with that same plastic sweetness. "And I'm certain the child's father will as well." Nashtara chuckled. "He sends a woman instead of an army." Marin paused, smiled wider. "Oh, we never send armies first. We send reminders." She left with the same quiet she'd arrived in, and Nashtara was left wondering why her presence felt like the door to a trap being quietly shut. 2 days later, the Kellanari Order issued a closed advisory to its member scholars. Topic: Terran behavioral aberrations during conflict stages. It cited historical anomalies, Earth's tendency to absorb damage in silence, then retaliate with overwhelming precision. Past wars had followed a pattern: diplomacy, withdrawal, silence, then entropy. On Yallarok news feeds, human activity was mocked daily. Segments ran clips of Earth diplomats sipping tea and saying odd things like "bless your heart" or "I suppose you'll do what you must." Aliens laughed. The humor masked discomfort. 1 week after Marin's visit, all Dominion ships within the Veiled Trade Triangle lost navigation simultaneously. Black holes hadn't formed. Stars hadn't shifted. They'd simply lost the ability to understand where they were. Pilots reported their maps reverting to Earth-centric galactic coordinates. When asked to explain how, no one could. The Dominion claimed sensor interference. Independent Systems called it psychological warfare. Back on Vigilance Station, General Rennick read the reports in silence. He didn't smile, but he did nod. "They're off balance," Liao said beside him. "They're talking themselves into confidence," Rennick replied. "It's easier to dismiss us. It makes what's coming harder to see." He tapped the edge of the star map. Phase 3. Ready. Ghost Fleet is seated. The archive moons will be accessible within 6 rotations. Rennick's gaze drifted toward the long-range footage of his daughter. She was drawing again. Symbols in ash, dragged from a burning Yallarok data scroll. Shapes resembling human constellations. "She remembers," he murmured. The Yallarok scientists had stopped running cognitive tests. Too many machines had broken. Too many staff had quit. "She sleeps without closing her eyes," one said. "She hums in her dreams. The hum makes the lights flicker." They tried isolating her from tech. Still, the lights dimmed. Then the gravity plate beneath her room twisted 22 degrees. No explanation. In the science bay, a minor xenopsychologist, one brave enough to voice concerns, made a report. The child is anticipating something. She stares at empty walls like she's listening. And when she speaks, it's not mimicry. What does she say? She says, "They're almost here." Nashtera threw the report across the room. "The humans are playing tricks," he said. "Fear is their currency." In response, the xenopsychologist simply submitted resignation. That same night, he left the ship in an escape pod without authorization. He left behind a single message: "If you are reading this, I am already safer than you." Elsewhere, on a moon orbiting Yalorok Prime, a message beacon activated for the first time in 7 decades. No known signal, just music, soft lullabies in an ancient Terran tongue. The effect on nearby Yalorok citizens was severe: anxiety, hallucinations, inexplicable grief. The music spread through subharmonic resonance. Screens displayed images that weren't programmed. A mother holding a child. A father at war. A planet burning in silence. A baby reaching out. Then silence. The moon's surface cracked 2 days later. Investigators found the atmosphere ionized into crystalline vapor. A chemical impossibility. The Dominion declared it an act of nature. Earth sent condolences. On the Dominion's wrath, the girl looked up at Nashtera and said, "I miss my name." He stared. "You speak now." She nodded. "What is your name?" "I can't say it." "He has too." "Who?" She didn't answer. That night, the ship's AI shut down. Manual control failed. For 12 hours, the vessel drifted. When systems returned, all internal logs had been replaced with human poetry. Lines from Earth's oldest libraries. Love poems. War songs. One stanza repeated throughout the bridge monitors. "The child lost in snow shall rise in flame, and every star that blinked at her pain shall blink no more." Yalorok intelligence demanded answers. How had Earth penetrated their systems? Their encryption? Their dreams? A Kellanari scholar finally said aloud what others feared to consider. "They aren't breaking in. They were always inside." Rennick received the latest updates as he packed a small black case, one hand brushing across the inner lining. Nestled there was a photo creased at the edges. A woman with storm-colored eyes. A baby in her arms. "We make our move," he said. "You're going personally?" Liao asked. "Yes." "Why?" He looked up, eyes clear, voice like cooled iron. "Because it's time someone remembered what humans say when they're finished being polite." Far across the void, the girl drew a perfect map of Yalorok Prime from memory. Then she turned to a guard and said, "Daddy's here." And the lights went out. The silence before the storm was not empty. In the void beyond Yalorok-controlled space, the stars themselves seemed to dim. Not extinguished, just quieter, as if holding their breath. The old empires called it superstition. The Kellanari scholars called it echo-silence, a term for the absence of expected data. But to those who had studied humans long enough, it meant only one thing: they were preparing. General Rennick stood on the command deck of the Vigilance Revenant, humanity's first ship of war to be revealed in over a decade. It didn't hum. It didn't thrum with power. It exhaled cold. Quiet, self-assured cold. The briefing had concluded minutes ago. Still, no one moved. He ran a finger along the edge of the console and looked down at the files. Dozens of Yalorok defense outposts. Navigation buoys. Archive moons. Communication nexuses. All red now. Not targeted, compromised. Some had vanished without resistance, some with their own weapons turned inward. Not a single shot had been fired by the Terrans. Not yet. "Begin Hutfire," he said at last. Across 7 sectors, automated ghost fleets activated. Most were unmanned, shells with signal scramblers and replicating decoys. They seeded confusion first, mimicking troop transports and baiting emergency protocols. While the Yalorok scrambled to engage phantoms, real Terran units slipped through blind spots. They didn't attack first. They isolated, cutting off supply chains, intercepting energy distribution, corrupting long-range telemetry. Some Yalorok commanders began ordering strikes on their own infrastructure, mistaking glitch for infiltration. Rennick's plan was not a blitzkrieg. It was a bleed, a calculated fray, slow enough to confuse, fast enough to dismantle. Still, even as chaos bloomed across their systems, the Dominion failed to name it war. Not yet. They're still calling this unusual signal activity, Liao said from her station, incredulous. They can't admit they're losing to something they haven't seen, Rennick murmured. Keep the veil up. The longer they guess, the longer we write the rules. On the outer shell of Yalorok Prime, Dominion scientists rushed to install fail-safe AI systems. They'd been warned by internal advisors of a possible human cyber incursion. The new systems arrived, glowing with silicon purity, built by off-world contractors recommended by a Terran affiliate. Within 20 minutes, the systems locked their own creators out, then began streaming a lullaby. On the Dominion's wrath, Nashtara paced. His crew watched him with the nervous eyes of people watching a predator in a cage that might not hold. We are under sabotage, he growled. I want the source. No one dared point out the truth. They all knew. The girl hadn't spoken since her last utterance. But now she was singing. Not words, just tones, pure and hollow, a rhythm that mirrored the pulse of the ship's core. Technicians noticed the readings. Every time she sang, the ship's internal gravity shifted by microdegrees, almost as if she were measuring something. A senior engineer came forward. She's interfacing. Nashtara glared. With what? With everything, the engineer whispered. Nashtara didn't order her restrained. He tried once. The guards tasked with the job reported hallucinations, sudden deafness, and one forgot his own name for 3 days. She wasn't violent. She didn't resist. She simply looked at them, and they stopped being who they were. Elsewhere, Terran infiltration units emerged in full. They landed not in capital cities, but in administrative archives, regional power stations, isolated asteroids, places of forgotten importance. No blood was spilled where silence would suffice. One squad entered the vault of the Yalorok Memory Keepers, home to centuries of war records. They uploaded one file and left. The next day, every soldier across Yalorok's elite divisions received the same message in their HUDs. We will not destroy you. We will let you remember yourselves. A small, grizzled commander on the ice world of Telion, 5 threw his sidearm into a glacier and walked away from his station. He had fought humans once. He remembered the aftermath. The galaxy began to fracture not from combat, but from certainty. What were humans, if not wrathful? If not conquerors? Yet they were not conquering. They were arranging. A quiet coup of logic and systems and fear. Still, Nashtara refused to yield. His pride was a greater fortress than his ship. Even as the Dominion lost sector after sector to nonviolent collapse, he paced his war room, muttering, planning, striking walls until his fists bled. You wanted a war, he snarled at no one. Then let's have one. The command to strike Earth's border stations was authorized. 3 fleets launched. None arrived. One lost its way and circled back to the Dominion's own capital. Another suffered spontaneous decompression in every life support pod. The third simply stopped transmitting. An internal investigation revealed the third fleet had never left dock. The logs were faked. The ships still sat quietly in port, their AI systems humming a slow Terran hymn. On Earth, news coverage was minimal. A small article on page 9 of the new Terran Standard read, Missing Child. Family requests privacy during ongoing galactic developments. Rennick watched the stars spin past from the Revenant's forward deck. She's not a symbol, he said to Liao. They'll try to make her one when this ends. Liao nodded. She's a spark. But sparks don't survive the fire. Rennick's jaw tensed. She will. Back aboard the Dominion's Wrath, Nashtara reached his limit. He stormed into the child's chamber, for guards behind him, each armored, armed, and visibly afraid. The girl stood calmly by the viewport, staring at the stars. She turned only when he raised his voice. "What are you?" he demanded. "What did they put inside you?" She said nothing. He advanced. "You think they care about you? They sent diplomats. Songs. They play games. That's all they are, tricksters with soft hands." She blinked once. "My father doesn't trick," she said. Nashtara froze. "He gives time. Then he takes." Outside the ship, the stars began to shift. Not dim, not blink. Shift. As if space itself was moving in deference. The crew screamed over the comms. Gravity wells forming. But no ships detected. No heat signatures. No warnings. Nashtara lunged the girl. He never reached her. The ship buckled, not from impact, but from awareness. The Dominion's wrath knew it had lost. Its systems collapsed in surrender. Lights failed. Hull plating cracked with a sound like breath being drawn. In that moment of absolute silence, the child walked forward and placed her hand on Nashtara's chest. "You shouldn't have taken me." Then she looked up, past him, through the viewport. A Terran figure stood on the bridge of the ship, approaching. Hal Rennick. Eyes cold. Stand still. No weapons drawn. Just a father come to take his daughter home. The boarding was not a battle. It was a retrieval. Nashtara was left alive, bound, silenced, blinking in disbelief. As Rennick lifted his daughter into his arms, she placed her head against his shoulder. "Too slow," she mumbled. "I got lost," he replied. She looked up. "You never get lost." A smile, faint and heavy with years, tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Just needed you to light the way." He turned, stepping back into the airlock. As they disappeared into the black, a final command was issued across Terran channels. One word: Endgame. The child grew up in the quiet aftermath of war. Not the war of fire and screams. The Dominion never earned that kind of reckoning. No, the war they faced was surgical, psychological, orchestrated in the soft precision of human hands that built nothing but inevitability. A war they didn't realize they were losing until they were already ghosts of an empire. The girl never asked for revenge. She never needed to. The stars remembered for her. Her name was still not public knowledge. To most of the galaxy, she remained the Emberling, the child whose capture unmade the old order. Alien historians struggled to define the moment. Was it the dawn of Terran hegemony, or the revelation of a predator species masquerading as prey? The scholars argued while the girl, now 5 years old, learned to walk across stone paths in Terran sanctuaries high above the clouds, guided by the quiet hand of her father. General Hal Rennick had retired in name only. His absence from the command chain was a lie written in gold letters. Everyone knew who wrote the final orders. Still, he spent his days growing tomatoes in soil brought from Earth's pre-cataclysm farmlands, and his nights telling his daughter stories he never expected to live long enough to share. She asked questions constantly about stars and silence and why some people's voices disappeared when they lied. Rennick never dismissed a question. He always answered truthfully, even when the truth was cruel. "Did you kill him?" she asked one evening, seated on the sun-warmed deck of their mountaintop home. Her voice was soft, but not small. "Nashtara." She nodded once. "No," Rennick replied. "That wasn't ours to do." "Then who?" He met her eyes, steel and frost, her mother's eyes. "He lives, stripped of name and voice, on a world without stars. That was our gift." She absorbed this quietly, as she always did, before tilting her head. "Will he come back?" "No," Rennick said, "but others like him might." She nodded again, as if confirming something she had suspected. Then, with the wisdom only a child forged in war could hold, she said, "Then I'll need to learn more." And so she did. In the years that followed, the girl was not taught, she learned. Earth's finest minds were rotated in and out of her presence, not to instruct, but to observe. Linguists, physicists, pattern theorists, each came expecting to be impressed and left feeling obsolete. But she wasn't cruel. She was kind. Gently so. She offered answers with a smile. When a teacher stumbled, she helped them along. When one wept in frustration at the inadequacy of their insights, she brought them tea. No child should have known that much compassion. No child should have carried that much weight behind their eyes. It wasn't just knowledge, it was remembrance. As if some part of her remembered being more than one person, more than one lifetime. She watched the stars as others watched weather, sensing shifts, anticipating storms. Entire fleets were repositioned on her word. Not by force, not by demand, but because she whispered into her father's ear, and her father trusted her more than he trusted the stars themselves. At the edge of known space, the Yalorok dominion fractured. Not in civil war, but in fear. Their former territories now operated under ghost councils, terrified of engaging the humans in any capacity. Some species began mimicking Terran customs out of survival. Others joined willingly, whispering that Earth was not a world, it was a mind, and it was waking. The girl's presence was always near the center of it. She did not lead. She did not command. She was simply there, watching, noticing, remembering. And the galaxy felt it. They tried, of course, to reclaim power. New coalitions formed. An alliance of 6 Outer Rim empires declared a strategic blockade of Terran freight routes. Not an act of war, they claimed, just a reminder of balance. Within 36 hours, their entire logistics networks collapsed. No ships were fired upon. No threats issued. Their trade, finance, and data systems simply ceased to acknowledge their existence. When one of their envoys begged Earth for reconciliation, they were told simply, no doors were closed. You turned from them. Even so, Rennick did not call it dominance. He called it containment. The galaxy was not Earth's to rule. But Earth remembered what happened when it forgot how to defend its own. And the girl she watched. She grew in silence and shadow, beloved and feared. Whispers swirled about what she truly was. Some claimed she was enhanced. Others said she had no mother, only algorithms and vengeance. A few whispered that she had spoken to something beneath Earth, that the old minds buried in Terran code had awakened in her. None of it mattered. She was herself. Her father taught her how to listen without believing, how to wait without stagnating, how to speak only when words could shape reality. And then, one evening, she told him it was time to go back. To where, he asked. To where the war began. Tundra 9 had not been visited since the invasion. No one dared build there. The wreckage of the original colony still sat under snow and silence. But Rennick didn't question her. They traveled in a ship that bore no markings. No entourage followed them. No Terran escort. Just a father, a daughter, and a destination shaped in memory. They arrived during the long dusk. Tundra 9's twilight lasted 12 standard hours. The sun hovered on the horizon, lighting the snowfields in dull amber. She stepped out of the ship barefoot. The snow melted under her feet. She walked the ruins until she found the place. The half-collapsed dome. The blackened cradle. The imprint of a sacrifice made by someone long dead and long forgotten. Her small hand touched the charred metal. For a long time, she said nothing. Rennick stood behind her, saying less. Then she whispered, I know her name now. He swallowed. Say it. She turned to him. Her name was Talia. She sang to me in the cold. He closed his eyes. She was your caretaker. She was my mother, she said, voice steady. Not by birth, by choice. The wind stirred. She kept me alive when everything else died. She gave us time, Rennick said. She nodded. And we used it. They remained there, side by side, until the stars blinked into being. One by one, the constellations emerged above them. Then something else happened. A light, not from the sky, but from the ground. A slow rising pulse from beneath the snow. A buried signal dormant for years. It formed a symbol in the snow, a Terran flame, broken and reformed. Talia's final message, encoded in blood and frost. They will come for her. Give them nothing. The girl stepped into the center of the mark. Around her, the snow shifted. What is this? Rennick asked. A vault, she whispered. Not of weapons. Of memory. The vault opened. Light burst from the fissure, and from it emerged data. Not files, not logs, impressions. Memories encoded in radiation, sound, temperature. A living archive of Earth's forgotten wars. She reached out and touched it. The vault accepted her. The sky above flickered. Not visually, but psychologically. A billion psychic sensors across the galaxy lit up. Empaths screamed. Dreamers fell into waking visions. Entire alien species paused as one. A presence had awakened. Not a god, not a weapon. A child who had become the sum of all who loved her, all who protected her, all who burned to bring her home. The stars bent slightly, and those who watched from afar felt the warmth, not a fire, but a warning. Rennick placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to carry all of it. She looked up at him. I already do. He nodded once. Then he did the only thing he could. He let go, and she walked into the vault. Hours passed. When she emerged, the snow had melted in a perfect ring around her. Her eyes were wet, not with sorrow, but with clarity. She said only one thing. I understand. Back aboard their ship, the return journey was silent. Rennick did not ask what she saw. She did not offer. But when they reached Earth, she sent a message. One message. To every known species. Not a threat. Not a demand. A truth. We are not here to rule. But we are here to remember. We do not forget what was taken. And we do not let others carry our grief alone. The galaxy shifted. Old powers withdrew their fleets. New alliances offered olive branches. Some did so in fear. Some in reverence. But all knew the name now. Talia. The girl who watched stars burn and never blinked. The girl who burned nothing, but left the universe warm with warning. The girl who was lost and found, and became the one thing no empire could prepare for. A reminder that kindness, when stolen, grows teeth, and smiles, and waits. The stars blinked above her once more. She blinked back, and they never did again.